Hi, and welcome to the Voices of the South. This is the podcast where we interview social innovators from the Global South and the people who support them. In this podcast, you will learn a little bit about the history of the social innovator, their project, and the change they have created. Thank you for hearing us and be sure to enjoy the episode. Although in the Voices of the South, our main goal is to interview social innovators, we would be making a great mistake if we were not to give the microphone to the people whose work has brought out the truth that otherwise would have kept buried in different places or in different societies. As such, today we have the honor of interviewing Zaina Erhaim, who is a journalist, a feminist, a teacher, and a change maker. Throughout her life, Zaina has supported many causes. She has been a reporter in active war zones, working towards empowering women in the MENA region, and helped train people to become citizen reporters. Zaina has worked with prestigious institutions such as The Guardian and the New Lines magazine and won multiple awards for her work being a journalist. And today she has been so kind to give us a chance to interview her for the Voices of the South. So, without anything more to say, Zaina, thank you for coming here and welcome to the Voices of the South.
Thanks a lot, Carlos.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. As we were talking a little bit before the interview, I would like you. I would like to hear your story. It's a bit of the things that I have gotten to read on the internet. You have a bunch of articles for again the Guardian and the Middle East. I read them. They are very emotional. At least for me, they were hitting my heartstrings. Reading all the experiences of the people that you interview, that you talk to in these war zones, basically. Uh, and also all your work as a feminist in the region, in the MENA region, that is, rather complicated, especially for that topic. So I don't know if you want to give us a little bit of your side of things. What get you into that topic? How did you start it on that?
Well, how I am started. How did I start? It's an old long story, but I think I've always had passion towards those marginalized voices, people, and causes. I don't know whether this could be the curse of feeling injustices and seeing them, or it's actually the benefit of having the lenses that sees such a stuff. I mean, in the same street, you can just walk and notice nice shops, but for other people, they can only see the homeless people and poor on the sides. I think I am cursed for being the second person, especially when I started realizing the effects of the gender injustices through my life and the story of all the women and non-binary people around me. At that point it was a path that there is no back. You can just only go ahead. However, it's really frustrating to see that all the struggle of the activists, the people and the organizations in the MENA region towards gender kind of equity is being fought back really harshly by different systems, even opposing systems like the regime and the opposition. They only get together and fight the same cause when it comes to gender equity. So, but despite that, you still find people who are doing the work. And I feel the role of journalists, and especially feminist journalists, is to keep telling those stories that people in general would just pass them without noticing, especially when you have active genocide happening and when you have occupation and when you have constant war happening in at least the three countries. It makes just justifications that this is like less priority issues more appealing for more people. So trying to fight that narrative and emphasize the fact that all the human rights are basics and are needed, regardless of whether it's death or it's imprisonment, or if it's losing your agency because you are born as a certain sex.
Yeah, I agree on you that perhaps it's a curse, but I think it's also a blessing that you can. you see the bad things on the other side of the street. Uh, Perhaps not the bad things. Perhaps it's better to say the differences and how well life can be very different from one neighbor to another. One house to another is just completely different depending on where you are. And which is the case in the region where you work, in the MENA region, which is the Middle Eastern, I forgot the
And North Africa.
North Africa. Sorry, yeah, the
And
Middle Eastern and North Africa.
by the way, the MENA name is actually a colonized name because they measure the words as if Europe is the center of the planet. So Middle East is where we're located comparing to Europe, while the accurate non-colonized name is SWANA, which is South Asia and North Africa. Southwest
Swan.
Asia and North Africa, yeah. So those who use the SWANA instead of the Middle East, for me, I completely click because we are the same on the decolonized level. But sometimes we have to use the MENA because it's much more widespread and easy to be understood. But it's good to just keep that in mind.
No, thank you. I didn't knew that, which probably tells a little bit about how much I am
Yeah.
aware of things. Thank you for the new information. I will do my best to keep it prevalent, not only during the interview but during my following during my life, because it's important. Or part of the objective of this program is to try to decolonize a little bit, at least on some spaces. So thank you for that correction. It, okay, but apart from that, we were talking a little bit about your experience as a feminist in the SWANA region, which can be complicated due to religion and cultural, mm, yeah, and cultural traditions that are there. Uh, I don't know if you can tell me a little bit about that. Like, how has been for you to explore this topic in the SWANA region that is eh, mainly dominated by but cultural traditions that, as you were talking, one of your articles is that as a woman you might not be seen seriously, quote unquote, because you're not wearing the headgear, for example. I don't know if you can talk about that a little bit.
I mean, in general, being a professional woman, I am not being taken seriously, point, regardless of what I'm wearing and what language I'm speaking. And it's the same here in Britain. And being a woman and from the Middle East, kind of not being taken seriously plus two, because of the mentality. So, I mean, in Syria and working in the MENA, I thought that this is related to our own religion and traditions, but I think the gender biases, regardless of the mainstream propaganda, it's very much there. And when it's combined with racism and colonial mentalities, the discrimination becomes even harsher. Um, and also knowing that there are many literature researchers that were saying or highlighting the fact that before being colonized by the West, our traditions were much more tolerant towards women, towards marginalized communities. I mean, I also recently knew that there were an outspoken lesbian groups even within my hometown, and I mean they were not pretty much accepted, but no one was fighting them. So they did exist until recently, but with the laws enforced by the French colony and the British ones, which were pretty much homophobic and they were sexist, I think maybe they were trying to push us to be there or to adapt our traditions to be much more backwards. So those played a huge role. And the actual laws that we have in most of the region countries, in Lebanon, in Syria, and in different parts, and even now the law anti-LGBTQ community in Iraq is actually drafted by the British colony. Same for the French ones. So we need to also take into consideration where these traditions came from and how they shaped during the occupations or the colonial area. And I mean, despite denying all what they've done, but our laws in Levant is mostly French and it wasn't updated. And in our laws, gay people should be put in prison because it's a crime. And it's the French. Why the French eventually developed and they had their own revolution, whatever. I mean, we didn't because dictatorship took advantage and they used this tradition to suppress women and suppress all marginalized community and gain the kind of trust or support of commercials and political elites who are mainly conservative men. And then the evil authorities just coordinate together, and that's how we reach where we are now.
Yeah, I perfectly understand where you're coming from. Well, I'm not entirely perfect, being that I'm a cisgender male who, depending on where you are in the world, would be considered as white and sometimes a little bit toasted. Uh, and obviously, my experience is different on that. But I understand the idea that is because of the colonizer and the import, sort of like the yeah, when the colonies, when the colonial powers went into the world and started to do atrocious things around the world and decided to transfer their good customs and traditions. Well, they very much also fucked up a lot of things in those cultures where they came to impose their ideas and their cosmology. As you say, in Latin America, there are groups, there are original populations that have nothing against the LGBT plus community, and sometimes they are even celebrated, depending on where you are. But because this part of the world were colonized by, in this case, in Latin America, in the case of Latin America, by the Spaniards, that were so focused on sort of taking care of the quote unquote good morals of the Catholic Church,
Exactly.
then everybody started to be against LGBT people. No, that before them that wasn't a thing in a lot of places. And yeah, I mean that this colonization process has gone. It hasn't stopped. Perhaps it stopped being as blunt and as violent as it was in the past, but it's still very much there. And I can see how the logic of, yeah, we want to support this extremist part of the population that in does not represent at all the general population, but is good for business in the area.
Exactly. Good for
And
politics.
that's
And then I'm saying also good for politics because they're easy to be both, they're easy to maybe manipulated. They will follow whoever is paying them, unlike the moral people who support human rights.
yeah, and it happens. You have I don't know if you know or if you have heard about a similar operation that like the one that was in Latin America, which was Condor Operation, Operation Condor, which was sort of like the CIA predominant program in Latin America that made sure that no country in Latin America could choose a left-leaning government throughout the 70s and the 80s. I don't know if in the SWANA region were something similar. I imagine that there was, because yeah, knowing the colonizers as you get to know them, they probably had something quite similar.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. And that's why we've seen before the uprising in Syria, France was leading the effort to whitewash al Assad, despite being responsible in many assassinations and political assassinations in nearby country in Lebanon, and despite its role in fueling jihadism in Iraq during the invasion. So, I mean, they were very happy with the dictators controlling the area because they know democracy is going to be harsh, even now. Harsh not just on them. It's the first thing that most democracies in our region are going to be doing is cutting relationships with Israel. And I believe there is a general consensus that they know if people were ruling by themselves, if people were able to elect and choose their representatives, this is going to be happening. So there is a general anti-democracy, I would say. Well, I'm not a political expert, but I could see that the general Western governments claiming to defend human rights and putting huge amount of money investments in democracy, they do not want to see real democracies in the MENA region because it wouldn't benefit their relationship with the West because they will be demanding equal seats and equal share, and it wouldn't benefit the existence of, I mean, the whole occupation in our region.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's crazy. Although we are jumping a little bit out of topic, but you can see it with Haiti, for example. He was the only well-known slave revolution. They were the only ones, at least to my knowledge, that managed to organize as a slave and kick out the French out of what is now Haiti. And it kept going. They were doing relatively okay. I mean, they were doing okay-ish, and then the French came back, started to bombard the city, Porto Principe, and obviously, well, Haiti didn't have the military prowess to take him away, so they ended into a really bad deal for Haiti, and then they defaulted. Then Citibank bought them, and then they just started to charge interest, interest, interest. Long story short, you have Haiti now, which is the people there are just suffering mainly because, in this case, the colonizers decided to go back and do a lot of extra shenanigans there that they already have done, but they wanted to double down on that for whatever reason. Well, not for whatever reason. They wanted money and they wanted power, as they do. But going back into the tracking us down into the topic that we were trying to start today, which is again for me is really interesting, is feminism and how it develops in different areas of the continent. There is many, many different waves of feminism. As a friend of mine would say, feminism has so many waves. There is now an ocean, and well, obviously you have the North, the global North feminism, which is really focused on what is the idea that the feminist women has of what a women should have access in the global north. But then there is the decolonized feminism that in turn divides in the regions and that in turn divides in the cultures that is being developed and is being used. So I don't know if you can talk a little bit more about what is the feminism or what is feminism in the SWANA region? Like what do you think is the difference from feminism there in comparison to what we are accustomed to see in the global north?
I'm working now on on a couple of podcasts and events related to the feminist movement in the region. I'm not sure about the wave calling, although I like the concept of it that it's continuous. It's not like dying and then starting over. It's more like having a push and then creating a better one and then keep going. But all the writers and all the feminists I've spoken with so far, they do believe that we have so many movements, even within the same country, within the region. And in our region, also there is this huge element that we call the state feminism, which are the feminists being created and supported by the states. Some states want to pinkwash their crimes or showcase that they're pretty much pro women, but those state feminists are the daughters of the patriarchal system, and they implemented like really well. So they suppress the grassroots feminists who are trying to challenge politics, who are trying to challenge capitalism, and all the unfair things that are not directly related to gender, but they're related to social justice. There is the element of the political closeness. I mean, in Egypt last month, there were a couple of feminists who went to protest in front of the UN women in solidarity with the Sudanese women and the Palestinian women in Gaza, and they were arrested. There were literally a couple of feminists activists who were reading a release in front of UN women. And certainly, UN didn't even publish a release or mentioned nothing, and it happened on their door in Cairo. So that's an indication to what kind of struggle and obstacles any very simple action in any movement is facing. And we've seen recently the laws in Iraq that is criminalizing homosexuality, and even using the word gender is now something that could eventually put you in a prison by law. I mean, yeah, see how we benefited from the invasion and how democratized Iraq has become. So I feel like after the 2011 and the movements and all of these very high hopes that we finally can get our homes back, and finally we're starting to hear feminists speaking out and loud. Now I think all dictatorships and authoritarian regimes realize that movements are connected. If you allow feminists to fight for their gender equity, that will encourage the democracy fighters to join the forces, and that would encourage those who are defending labor works, and that will eventually turn into a political uprising or movement. So they're suppressing any kind of movement. At the past, there was some margin for the what they call them women right defenders, because they underestimate our work, because they underestimate who we are, because they don't think we are serious enough to be taken seriously. But I think now, after what the feminists have done, after the uprisings in the region, this is different. They do take us seriously, and that's why we're suppressed on all levels by all authorities.
Hi, this is Carlos, the host of the Voices of the South. The Voices of the South is a small project that mainly works thanks to the help of the people around the team. So if you like this episode and would like to help us, we will appreciate it a lot. The best way to help is to share the interview and subscribe to the podcast so other people can find us. Anyhow, thanks for being here, and let's go back to the episode. Gee, I didn't know that gender. I mean, I know that gender has started to become a trigger word for a lot of people, which honestly is, yeah, it's something that I don't understand, but I didn't knew it was taken up to such a degree that now you can even be imprisoned for saying that word. Like it talks about the power of a word that a word can have if you give it enough fear, so to say. It Yeah, I didn't knew about the UN event that happened in Cairo. I have some criticisms for the UN in general. One of them is that in the sorry, not the millennium goal, but the development objectives, the SGDs, they don't have any single one that relates or even acknowledge the existence of LGBT plus community, which is it speaks a lot on who is in there and who is working towards these kind of policies. No, like how how do we want to create a world where everybody can be and be themselves if we are not even acknowledged everybody? I mean, of course, it's not easy. It can be complicated, but if we don't even try, then well, what's the point there? Well, thank you for sharing. Um, yeah, it's impressive what is happening. Impressive
In a sad way.
in a sad way. Yes, definitely. But uh, I would like to ask you then, in your time in the specializing in the region, in your time being a reporter, being an activist, what is the greatest success that you think you can share with us in your work? What would you say that is something that you go back and it's like, for me, this is what makes it worth it. For me, this is what keeps me going as a feminist, as a journalist, as an activist. I don't know if you have any yeah, you a great success that you want to share with us.
Well, I haven't been doing direct reporting or direct journalism work for a while, not because I lost my belief in its worth, but because I'm trying to stay away from the news. I mean, I can't stand handling the news anymore. But what I felt like, I'm really glad I eventually chose this path is when now I mentor lots of journalists from the region, specifically women, and I coach them and I help them to develop their ideas into pieces, whether features or investigation pieces. And last year, one of the young journalists I was mentored, she was nominated for an international award for an investigation I supervised her on. Let's say I coached her on. And I felt like as if it's mine. I felt as if this piece is mine. Same with journalists from Yemen. I was also coaching, I think, 10 of them, and they were producing pieces about health and gender in the camps. Iraqi women journalists. I'm now working with Palestinian women journalists as well on their pieces. I feel like every piece I help or give an advice in is mine. And when those women who are not sure about their abilities, they feel much more comfortable to do more and pitch more and ask me to put them in touch with some people I know. And then I find them becoming prominent women journalists. I think that's the main success I feel, because us who started it 20 years ago, I feel now we're becoming on the edge of, and then what? And until when I'm gonna be lashed, and how much energy do I left to put into fighting back those who are trying to silence me? So supporting the younger generations who still have this energy is the only hope, that those women will still be there and they will still be vocal and they will feel appreciated, and hopefully they will continue and pass it over.
I Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. Again, I know it's kind of, it gets tiresome after fighting for making a change or creating something new. Just again and again and again having to face obstacles and challenges and everything, it gets tiresome. Uh, and it's really, or at least I'm glad that you are trying to take care of your emotional and mental health. It's not good for anybody to just constantly be on the process of facing challenges and obstacles and keep trying to surpass them. But on the other side, I'm also really glad that you are helping the new generations to come into their own and become, in this case, women journalists in a region that is, I mean, any or a lot of the developing in a lot of the places in the countries in the developing world in the global south can be dangerous. Coming from Mexico, I know that the journalists back in Mexico are probably, I think they are fighting for the first spot on how dangerous their profession is. I'm not entirely sure if are they have won the first spot, but I have heard that they risk their life every day, and I imagine that, well, in this case, the women that you are coaching, they also, a lot of them probably risk their life on a daily basis to get the truth, to get what is happening in their communities to the outside. And I don't know if you have any recommendations of these articles for the people that are going to be hearing us. If you would like to name an article or something like that, if you have it one in the top of your mind.
I don't have articles and people in my mind, but I would have one recommendation for any foreign language readers for any story that is coming from the SWANA region. I would love for them to try to find someone who is writing from the region itself rather than internationals writing about us. And even if they had some pieces or media outlets reporting on us, to just question the perspective and put their privileges and their narration and the politics of that channel into consideration. And there are many writers who are trying to write in all different languages to make it visible. So try to find the writers from the own region, and hopefully those who have a sense of human rights approach, who are not aligned with the authorities. And there are plenty of independents who deserve to be supported, read, shared, and when they're getting attacked, also it would be nice if they could get some support. There are even some outlets that are being banned and attacked for being independent, like Mada Masr in Tunis, and like Daraj Media in which is Mina, but it's based in Beirut.
I want to ask, but I also want you to feel free to not answer to this question. What I like to ask is, now we have covered something that has made you feel proud, something that has made you feel good, which is the case of you helping uh, young women or the new generation of journalists, of women journalists in the region. I don't know if there is any event that you would like to share with us that it's perhaps the opposite, a situation that you think that you could have handled different, that you think you could have done, maybe not better, but yeah, better is perhaps the word. The word. I don't know if you have any memory or experience that you want to share with us about that one.
I mean, we all have this doubts and thoughts about whether we could have survived more, we could have compromised more to stay in our home countries, how would have been our work and our life. I always wonder, we say in Arabic, we drowned our boats quickly, which is a metaphor being used by just burning your boats down so you wouldn't be able to come back. So I wonder whether I would have been able to keep using pseudonyms and hide and keep doing less seen journalism work, but still live in Syria or in the region. But then, I mean, the risk of being arrested, and then certainly I wouldn't be able to be as vocal. I wouldn't be able to participate in any in-person events. So there is lots of pros and cons for sure. Um, but that question is always present. Should have suppressed myself more to stay longer, or did do the right thing by just saying what I believe and what I'm seeing and paying the price for that? I'm not sure until now what is better, to be frank. I think eventually any independent journalist or human rights defender wouldn't be able to survive Syria, or sadly most of our SWANA countries nowadays, unless they're suppressing themselves to the maximum, and that is not sustainable.
Yeah, I yeah, yeah, it's not sustainable. I mean, from one side is you follow your passions and you face the consequences, which in this region and in other regions in the world, it could lead up to being dead or in prison for forever, um, or you go away and you leave behind family, friends. Yeah, no, I can see that is a, well, it's a complicated decision to make, and I don't I don't know if I would be able to say like, yeah, what I did living or staying was good. I I would very much I would very much leave it to somebody else in the future and be like, yeah, this was a good or a bad decision. Um, I'm yeah, I'm glad to have you here again. Thank you for sharing and thank you for being so open. Um, we're getting ready to finish the interview. We are about to we're actually in the last few sections. And in this case, I would like to ask you if you have any recommendation, if apart from reaching out to independent journalists that are working in the region, that are from the region rather than from somebody from somewhere else. I don't know if you have anything that you would like to recommend to perhaps some journalists that is starting, uh, either in the SWANA region or in Latin America or in in one of these regions in the global south that are, well, dangerous to be a journalist to begin with. I don't know if you want to share any piece of advice or anything like that.
For the journalists themselves.
Yeah, being that, well, I hope that somebody that wants to or tries to be a journalist or wants to become a reporter in either in the SWANA region or in Latin America is hearing us, and perhaps this piece of advice might help.
Okay. Well, I don't think I'm in the right wisery place to share an advice, but I will tell you what I would have told myself couple of
Sure.
years ago. Um, don't let anyone question your ethic or make you feel that you're less professional for having passion for human rights, because this is what journalism is about. And if journalism is not about social justice and justice for the people, I don't see what our role is different from what AL is doing with the news nowadays. Um, Take breaks and think about yourself. Most of the journalists who are working in such a high adrenaline areas tend to keep working all the time. And I was being told so many times to take leaves, and I've never done that before. And I regret it, because suddenly I lost 10 years of my life where I don't have any beautiful memories on the beach. It's mostly running and helping others and working. So having this offline time with the ones that you love is really essential, and enjoying the days where there is no crisis or awful news. So this is something I very much regret not having in the past years.
Yeah, it's good to cherish the positive moments, or at least the neutral ones, when you can. Thank you for the advice. I hope that a small advice can help anybody who is hearing us in the future. Okay, just the last two sections of the interview. One of them is an open section. If you have anything that you want to say that you think we didn't touch in the interview, or you want to emphasize on, please let me know. Let us know. And finally, where can people reach you out if you want to be reached out? eh, Social networks or your website that you want to share with them, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, my DM was open on Twitter before it was taken over by Elon Musk, and he closed the DMs. But Twitter usually is an easy place to reach out to me. LinkedIn. My website is more like my kind of hub where I put everything I publish and I do, just to trying to keep track on things. But also there is a contact form, and I mean I'm happy to help when I can.
Yeah, awesome. Apart from that, anything that you want to say? Anything that you think we didn't touch upon that you would like to say about?
No, I think that's all. But in this critical period, also when international funding and the grants for independent organizations and independent media is really crucial. I think we can also all advocate for this to keep going and to go for actual independent entities, grassroots entities, rather than the big corporate international companies that are taking half of the grants before it reach its own people. So this is something else I would very much love for us all to advocate for.
Yeah, that's another topic that I would like to discuss later. But thank you for that one. Well, it was a pleasure to have you here, Sanya. Thank you again for coming, and that would be it from us.
Thank you, Carlos. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you so much for staying with us after the episode. We would like to thank our patrons who are the main supporters of the podcast, and we hope to see you soon on the next episode of the Voices of the South.